I had a clip from my interview with Sneako that got clipped by a bunch of different Christian people because basically, like, we were talking about religion, and I'm not making much of a secret of it that I consider Sneako to be basically like a very surface level religious person. You know, he just doesn't seem to have gone out of his way to have like learned anything about Christianity or whatever the fuck he says he's into. And to me, that's just kind of absurd, because what I said was that if I believed that God was real, to me, it would seem like demanding of a massive amount of my time to try to understand this and to put it into perspective and to figure out exactly what God wants of me and everything like that. I spend no mental energy on that because I don't believe in God. But if I did believe in God, that would be beyond fascinating to me. And and Sneako just straight up is like, nah, that sounds like a waste of time. And a lot of Christian people love that because they're just like, look at this atheist who's so right about this topic. Now, he doesn't believe in God, so that's bad, but he's right about everything else. Like, you should be this fascinated by this higher power.
I think faith is beautiful, but it's demanding. It's work. It's effort. It's a commitment. You know, like when people go to church every Sunday, like, just think about this. What's one thing you can name in your life that you've attended every single week with others for the last 30 years?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
There's people who do it for 70, 80, 60 years of their entire life. Every single Sunday, they come in with their community. They all share in on faith. They all listen to a sermon of sorts. Maybe it's a different person who's doing it at different times. They've watched people go through baptisms. They've watched people make confessions, or like not necessarily been in on for confession, but they've been part of this community that's kind of just built its own on some time. Like, there is something beautiful about investing in yourself to try to live by a set of code of values that aren't easy, because what faith does and religion does, even like I'm not religion, I can appreciate it from the outside now as a grown person who's not being forced upon, you know?
Right.
It's like it gives you this framework, and adhering to it is not easy because it requires discipline, right? It requires you to understand what these sins are, why they're bad for your life as well, right? The reason why they're telling you not to fuck around all the time isn't just because they don't want you to have fun. There's risks with you have kids out of wedlock, which, you know, I mean, all of a sudden there you have like children in difficult situations, potential for diseases, potential for heartbreak and stuff like that. Like, these are compounding things that are very difficult. So when they say it's a sin, they're understanding, like, generally speaking, doing this is going to be bad for you. And adhering to that idea of like, I will not sleep around until marriage, or I will try to do my best to not indulge in this as much as possible. It takes work. So when I hear these guys talk about faith all the time and, oh, this religion, so they only talk about the stuff that's self-serving to them, not realizing that faith is about sacrifice. It's not about benefits. Right. So it's a complete flipped around idea of how you should approach faith in general. And they use it as a vehicle to draw in more viewers and to make it more appealing, when in reality, it's a grift.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you look at the Ten Commandments, this is a very early attempt at man basically trying to lay down some rules and say, here are some things that if you want to live a good life, you should avoid. It's all just a bunch of self-control shit. It's all a bunch of shit that if we weren't societally conditioned to not do it, we would do it. If it was not illegal and societally looked down upon to kill someone, probably we would have both killed someone in our life because they looked at us wrong or fucking pushed us, or, you know, some fight that we got into that ended up becoming nothing would have been a murder because of the fact that society has created all these rules to, you know, avoid these consequences. And yeah, I mean, like, Ten Commandments, don't cheat on your fucking wife, basically, is like, you know, I'm sure, you know, that's understandable how prehistoric people, not prehistoric literally, but like people thousands of years ago needed some kind of guide to like understand the rules, to try to start to lay down some kind of framework. And to 2,000 years later, to think that the best way to live your life is to basically just like take some shit that some people thought of when they were living on the farm and they had almost no understanding of the world, and to think that there's some great insight there into how to live your life. I mean, it's fascinating, but it's like there's much more coherent thoughts out there about what the good life is.
I don't disagree. I think the framework still works pretty well, even in a modern day society, because I think the core tenets of it being like, you know, be charitable to your neighbor, you know, understanding that you have to be kind to others, or that you are engaging in this unity with this woman, that there is a certain amount of faithfulness that's demanded and that's expected of you. All these things still ring very true today in terms of how they're important, even in modern society. I don't disagree that it's not the perfect framework, which is why I think they've updated at different points or they've made certain small changes. But, you know, even the whole like no pork thing, the no pork thing in a lot of religions sounds stupid, but you can imagine in those times, pork was probably a very difficult meat to eat without diseases being, you know, fomented afterwards in a lot of the people who ate it. And so they put this rule in to protect people. Do we need it as much today? Absolutely not. So that's probably something you can do it because, like, who cares? At the end of the day, if it's meat's fine. But originally, why it was it created as deception is very understandable. They were just trying to protect folks. I'm sure if sugar and cigarettes existed then, they probably put those as the 11th and 12th commandment. Thou shalt not eat sugar, thou shalt not smoke cigarettes, right? Because those things are killing folks.
Well, but if the Ten Commandments were coming from some sort of divine wisdom, then you could imagine that stuff like that would have been included.
Because they would have known that shit existed.
Because it would have been like, you know, they would have understood things that people didn't already understand at that time.
Crazy.
In reality, it took thousands of years for people to figure out that, like, oh, smoking can kill you.
Nah, imagine in 15 AD, they're like, guys, thou shalt not use your cell phone too much. Like, they would have been confused as what
Put
the
the
fuck
Marlboros
is a cell
down,
phone, bro?
boys.
Nah. They couldn't have done that at the time. But I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
All this to say, like, I've grown to like appreciate religion in a lot of ways on the outside, even though I'm not religious myself.
I agree with that too. And a lot of people think I'm this like full-blown religious hater. I respect and appreciate the role that it seems to play in a lot of people's lives where they find comfort in it and it gives them a structure and everything like that. I don't agree with whether it's real or not, whether it's like founded in reality, but I think for the vast majority of people, religion is probably a positive thing in their life.
Yeah. As you get older, man, community becomes a harder thing to find. And I think without a religious community, that's like super difficult.
Yeah.
Faith brings a lot of people together, and I think that's like part of the human experience, and folks are lacking in that.
And
folks are super lonely right now.
I think that's the biggest problem in society probably is that stuff like all our institutions are just fading away, like the church, and that there hasn't been something good to come about to replace it aside from
TikTok.
like what? Yeah, consumerism, you know, going to Abercrombie.
Fucking TikTok, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to shit on the whole app itself, but if you think about it, like that's how people are connecting with others. That's what people spend most of their day on now. It's like that's a wild thing to imagine. It's not with people; it's watching other people live and dance, I guess, and do some silly shit. So yeah, I think people are really lacking.
Yo, we just hit 400,000 subscribers right here on the Clips channel. So if you want to help us out, click subscribe, get us to 500K. Yeah.